Hello again and thank you for your interest and time. As always, I would be very happy about a like from you. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, and activate the bell in YouTube, so you never miss a video from me. If you want to learn more about analog, hybrid and digital photography, you are invited to browse my homepage apertureonepointfour.com, and join me on Instagram at apertureonepointfour.com. I will tell you about my many years of experience with different camera systems, and give you tips for a successful start in analog or digital photography, or photography has been your hobby for a long time, and you are looking for new ideas. You are very welcome. But now it starts with the presentation of this older Soligor autofocus lens, Soligor Autofocus 2.8 to 4.5 28 to 70 mm. Here with Canon EOS bayonet. During my research, I found few sources and data on this lens. It seems to be identical to the Tokina 2.8 to 4.5 28 to 70 mm from the same period. This lens was offered with different fixed mounts. Surely the lens was available as autofocus version for Canon EF, Nikon AF, without own focusing motor, Pentax AF and Minolta A. For the Tokina version, the lens hood Tokina SH522 can be used. Whether this also fits on the Soligor version is unknown to me. Weighing about 330 grams, with a maximum length of 8.3 centimeters, the lens is extremely compact, especially considering its high starting aperture of 2.8. The usable aperture stops change with the adjustment of the focal length. At 28 mm, the aperture ranges from 2.8 to 22, at 35 mm from 3.2 to 25, at 50 mm from 4 to 32, and finally at 70 mm from 4.5 to 36. The autofocus works audibly and relatively fast, at least on my analog Canon EOS models or on my Canon EOS 5D SR. On my Canon EOS R, in conjunction with the Canon mount adapter EF to EOS R, there were frequent function dropouts. In many cases no automatic focusing was possible. Only after switching off the camera and then switching it on. But sometimes only after removing and reattaching the lens, did the autofocus work. At least the FX data was written correctly to the image file. On my Sony a7 III, the lens did not work with the Sigma MC11 or the Viltrox adapter. To use the macro function, you have to turn the zoom ring beyond the 70 mm focal length position with some effort. There is no autofocus available in the macro range itself. As you can already see in the video, the lens offers the familiar switch from AF mode to manual focusing. You don't feel any resistance when focusing manually. Thus, this function is not an experience, and the adjustment requires extreme care. Otherwise you will suddenly slip a few meters. Image stabilization is of course not present, nor is a seal against moisture and dust. This was the standard for this class of lens at the time. The length of the lens changes when zooming and focusing. The filter thread rotates with it. This is not ideal for using polarizing filters, for example. But what optical performance does this lens offer? I'll first show you unprocessed raw files that I took with the Canon EOS R. This lens does not like backlight at all. Here you can still see an aperture range, from aperture 5.6 to 22. As you can see, the lens does not produce well-defined, beautiful sun stars either. The distortion is, especially at close range and at a focal length of 28 mm, quite clearly barrel-shaped. At a slightly greater distance from the subject, the distortion is visible, at all focal lengths, but can be easily corrected in the image processing program, if necessary. To cut a long story short, at 28 mm, the lens is completely unusable for my needs at f2.8. The aperture values 4 and 5.6 provide an improvement. However, I would use the lens at 28 mm exclusively with aperture 8 or 11, Or maybe I would better use my smartphone? But take a look at the results with different aperture values yourself, and decide if the performance is enough for you. By the way, I bought my Soligor 28 to 70mm used, together with an analog Canon EOS 650. I only wanted the camera, but the lens was included. From f/16, the performance of the lens decreases due to the occurrence of blur, caused by diffraction. And here is a comparison of the imaging performance at 63mm, at aperture 4, as well as at aperture 11. A really stark difference. Well, however, I don't need a lens that is only somewhat usable from aperture 11. But, I am not surprised about the optical quality. The lens is probably over 30 years old. It is small and compact and had to hold its own here on a camera with 30 megapixels. Plus it wants to be fast. That is too much. Physics cannot be outwitted so easily. As always in my videos, I'll show you a few pictures at the end that I took. In this case with the Soligor 2.8 to 4.5 28 to 70mm autofocus. I will keep the lens anyway. Cameras with lenses look much more charming in my display cases than naked cameras. For photography, however, it stays at home. And now finally come the promised pictures. The raw files were processed in Lightroom and saved as a JPG file.